Hello everyone, this is D.I.D. Choi, and today we'll be talking about how to edit solo instruments and put them into a mix. So today I've made a little composition with solo clarinet and strings. And basically today I'm going to be walking through how to make the clarinet sit better into the mix and make it sound like it's kind of in the same space and have the same ambience and have a better balance between the solo instrument and the ensemble. So as you can see, I have the clarinet recorded. There's a couple different takes, a little bit of splicing, and the clarinet is untuned right now. Now, I mean untuned in two different ways because as I was recording this on my clarinet, I forgot to tune. So I didn't really check my intonation and I just went for it. Of course, I was adjusting on the fly, but a lot of it is not quite in tune. And the second way that it isn't quite in tune is that there's no auto-tune on it or anything. Now with a professional session player, you wouldn't need any auto-tune. They would have tuned and most of their notes would be bang on. But because I forgot to tune, I am going to bounce the track to preserve all the takes, mute that first track, and I will turn on flex pitch. Now I know, you guys are gonna say this might be cheating, but when you are a clarinet player that hasn't played in a few months, sometimes you need a little bit of help just to make sure you're completely in tune. Now, if you see here, most of my notes are actually very much in tune. They're within, 10 cents. Depending on whether you're using just intonation or not, sometimes you gotta be 13 cents, 14, 15 cents off. So you can see my first few notes are a little sharp, and then immediately I adjust, and I am basically right on. So that's good because that makes me look like a better musician. Now I'm just gonna put those right on and let's see how they sound. Great. So now, because I don't want to bore you with all the tuning stuff, we'll just do a quick time lapse. The second bit, again, is quite off at the start, but you can see that I'm adjusting in the second bit of the phrase. So the good news is I did not have to tune myself that much, which makes me feel very proud of myself. All those weeks of not practicing wasn't so bad after all, right? I'm not an instrument specialist, I'm just a composer. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off flex pitch. Let's zoom into the waveform a little bit. If you listen to the clarinet here, you can hear a little bit of the ambient noise. There's me touching my reed and breathing in, so I'm just going to cut into that a little bit with the fade tool. I'm just going to listen through and make sure to cut any kind of extraneous noises during the silences. There's another bad attack. My A's are a little weird. I wish I was better at them, but that means I need to practice. 40 hours a day. And make sure to cut out the end. There's going to be a little bit of room ambience that trails off, but I mean, my room is not treated, so that doesn't really matter. I don't really care about that ambience. I'm going to add my own reverbs anyways. So first things first, I'm going to start by adding an EQ, and I'm going to put a high pass filter. So I am going to put this at 140. Now this particular piece doesn't even go down there, so I could take it higher. It doesn't really matter. All this is to clean up all that extraneous rumble and noise. I recorded in a fairly quiet environment, so it shouldn't be much of an issue even if I didn't take it out, but why not? Now because there's so much highs, I'm just gonna go through and EQ stuff out. Just have the bell up, swipe through, listen for bad offending frequencies. Here we go. And I think that's pretty good. I just gave a slight boost to the lower mids to warm it up a little bit, boost the fundamental a bit. And two little cuts, one for a bit of that shrieky tone, and one for some of the key clicks and airy sounds that I just want to reduce a tiny bit. So while we don't really compress in classical music or, do any limiting and stuff unless it's like a tiny bit for mastering, I'm gonna add a bit of a tape emulator. What this is gonna do is it will kind of kill the dynamics a tiny bit, but because the clarinet is recorded up close rather than far away, there's just going to be some inconsistencies where the mic is closer to a particular hole for a certain note versus a different note where it's really far. For this example, I had the mic, kind of near the front of the bell, maybe about foot and a half away. But that still means that when I play my throat tones, it might be a little more distant than when I'm playing some of the, where all my fingers are covering most of the instrument. So here we go. Here's the tape machine. So what you want to do is set the record level to a healthy level, so that it's just going near the red zone but not quite getting there. Just gonna do just a tiny bit, but a little more of the saturation. I think that's good. So as you can tell, it is a very subtle effect. Lots of people won't notice it, but it's just gonna handle the dynamics just a tiny bit and warm up the tone ever so slightly. Next up, I'm going to add my favorite reverb is Valhalla Room. It's only $99 or so, but it is so worth it. I use it in just about every piece I do. I'm gonna use a little preset I have. So here I have my Valhalla reverb. Let's listen to it. I'm gonna add another EQ, and here I'm just gonna do a little more drastic stuff. A gentle high cut. I think I went a little too much. Now, though I have the tail, it still sounds like it was recorded up close. One thing you need to do is add some kind of early reflection. Now, that might be through an IR, that might be through a spatialization app. So I'll show you a bit of both. Here I have Space Designer. Let's go stereo. I'm going to use the Todd AO reverb. This is something available kind of on the internet. I just found it. Can't remember where I found it, but it is available. So let's listen to it just with. I'm going to turn off the tail for a moment. Turn this off. And on. Just adds a little bit of that distance. It's not like far distance because I have the wet quite low, but it just adds a bit of space. And paired with the reverb tail, and off, and on. So there's one option. I'll turn off the Space Designer, and the other option would be to use something like Virtual Soundstage. So because I'm going for a bit of a solo instrument feel, I'm going to have it right, kind of beside where the conductor would be. I'm going to boost the early actually I'm going to cut the direct signal down a bit. I want a Deca-tree because that gives a nice wide sound. Concert hall. Let's see how this sounds. I'm going to move the mics back a little bit. So here, let's hear it in the mix. I think we could actually have it farther back. So that gives a bit more of a spatialized sound. Now I personally, in this case, prefer the Space Designer. And depending on the instrument, just having artificial early reflections might be better. And for other instruments, it might be better to have a IR. Especially for lower instruments, it's very difficult to place them just right on the stage. Meanwhile, clarinets sound very nice. Anything kind of higher up that requires less of the low room sound, it's going to be a lot easier to put it into the mix. Getting a tuba to sound like it's in a hall is really hard. Even with the best IRs, you don't really get the sense that, the room is really vibrating with the tuba. Because if you have a tuba in the hall, the chairs are going to be shaking, the curtains are going to be vibrating a little bit, A clarinet, not so much. Maybe just a bit of the high things, a little bit of the metal might shimmer, but an IR can cover most of that, while it can't really cover, the feeling of an earthquake. So let's see what we have here back with the Space Designer IR. Now, while it is a solo instrument, it does feel a little too loud for me. So sorry about that. I just added some RXD click, and that should kind of get rid of some of the key noises because, you know, this is recorded close again, so the key noises are going to be present, while in a hall they wouldn't be as present. Sometimes you would hear the occasional one, but you know, it wouldn't be very prominent. So that's going to add a little bit of lag to the mix, but that's okay. So far I was mixing on my headphones because, you know, I don't want the sound to bleed into the mic. But right now I'll turn off the mic for a second and just monitor on my speakers, and hopefully that'll give me a better picture of how it's sounding.
A few moments later.
Alright, so just listen to it on my speakers. It's sounding pretty good. Because I'm doing all this screen recording stuff, I got Logic routed a little weirdly, and as a result I've been cutting some corners a little bit, but as I'm listening through I'm noticing some of these splices here aren't very clean. For some reason Logic decided not to crossfade between some of these, so you hear a little bit of the audio blips. So if I was doing this for a project, I would make sure I would go back and edit everything so it's sounding really flawless. I might even do a couple more takes because I just composed the piece and then started playing it on the clarinet right away. Did only 3 takes and a tiny bit here just as a correction. So I didn't really have time to practice the piece or learn it at all. And as I'm listening to it a couple more times now, I'm finding things that I wanted to have done a little differently. Maybe played it with some different nuances here and there, maybe not taking as many breaths in some places, or moving the breaths to other places. But you get the idea. This is just for a YouTube video. The harp is playing totally freestyle too, by the way. So here's the final recording. So there you have it. Mixing in a solo instrument into a orchestral mix is not that hard, especially if it is a higher instrument like a violin, a flute, clarinet, you know. Some of the lower instruments might be a little more challenging, but in any case, you want to have a fairly minimal approach, not too many plugins, you know, not too much distortion, or you're not doing a lot of compression or oversaturating stuff, all very, very subtle. So here, a very light EQ, cutting out the unneeded information, a little bit of declicking for the finger clicks, a tiny bit of saturation from the tape emulator, and another, tone shaping EQ just to get rid of some of the higher frequencies, just to dampen it a little bit, make it sound a little bit far away. And then you need some kind of early reflection solution and put it through a reverb that matches all the reverbs of your other instruments. That's basically it. If this video helped you, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ding the notification bell, and leave a comment. I always love all of your feedback, and it really helps me. This has been D.I.D. Choi. I'll see you in the next video.